Hey, we're recording.
Hey, we are. All right. It's
How's trade?
working.
Yeah. How's things going? Everything all right?
Good, good. How
Yeah,
about yourself?
I'm
How are
good.
you feeling? Doing
Uh,
better?
yeah. So yeah, I had the booster vaccine. Or is it yesterday morning? Yeah,
Okay.
about like 10 o'clock or something. So it
It knocked you out, huh?
actually no, so it was the day before I had it. Yeah. So that
Okay.
evening, so it's Thursday today. Yeah, Tuesday morning I had it. So that evening I was kind of dozy, like sleepy early. And then yesterday I just like had a temperature and yeah, just so
I see. You crashed.
pretty much. Yeah, I felt like I
Yeah.
was operating like 50% all day. It was just like, I was doing stuff, but I'm like, I'm just not really all there. So
Yeah.
it's fine. So I just say, it's better than the alternative, isn't it? It could be worse.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
take it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I haven't taken the booster shot yet. Double vaccinated, but not the booster.
Yeah, the thing, because Japan's they're a little bit late started. I mean, they've only just really started doing their boosters now, but it seems really low take up compared to the first vaccine. The initial two, is very high. It's like 70 something percent of adults have had it, but so far the booster is only like 10-15% or something. Just people just aren't really as lining up for it. So
Huh.
either way,
Yeah. Yeah.
still
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. It's better to be prepared.
indeed. So yeah, so what have you been up to? You've been busy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The fun never ends.
It
What?
really does. I know. It's like people say, "Oh, you've been busy." I'm like, I'm never not busy.
I know, right?
A little bit of a break might be nice sometimes. But
Yeah.
yesterday it's weird because I work primarily for US companies. My like main client is US based. So yesterday here was a national holiday, but kind of doesn't apply, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, I could take the day off. It just means I don't get paid for it, right? So
Right.
but my son's got homework to do, and he was playing online with his friends and stuff. So it's like, oh, just normal day. So of course
Yeah.
that means everyone, like my friends are all like, yeah, halfway, midweek break and all the rest. I'm like, yeah, sounds nice.
Must be nice.
Yeah, unfortunately, because this startup is kind of, it's very small. It's kind of, all hands on deck doing everything. We're not really even set up for, I guess, US holidays either. So they kind of just pass by as well. So I should
Yeah.
make more of an effort to actually just like, if something's a good excuse for a break, I should take it. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's great.
Do
You
you
have a
do
vacation so you can get some work done, right?
Yeah. Do you do Rails for your clients or are
Yeah,
you
yeah. My client job is all Rails stuff. I mean, I kind of chose the stack for them, and so I'm doing all of their back end development. And it's interesting because I do, my current framework of choice is Elixir and Phoenix,
Yeah.
and that just really, that's really clicked for me. It's really cool, especially for anything that's interactive, like web based interactive, and
Yeah.
it's just really clicked for me. I love it. But obviously, Rails I've been doing since forever. Literally, like the weekend the very first version of Rails came out, was made public, I played with it that weekend, and I've pretty much been doing it since. So I've done a lot of Rails, and it's funny because it was always the exception. The big frameworks at the time were all Java based. PHP kind of then has become I guess the default startup-y kind of stack, especially with smaller, younger folks. Rails has now become like the accepted old school framework, I guess.
Yeah.
So I mean, the nice thing about choosing it over Phoenix and LiveView is just that so many more people know it. So I'm not going to be the only developer on this client project, and at some point I'll probably end up having to either hand it over, or the team will increase, and hiring a couple of, even if at first it's extra freelancers. Finding Rails freelancers is going to be a whole lot easier than finding Phoenix freelancers, right?
Yeah.
So it was a very conscious decision for like, this isn't a choice for me, it's a choice for them. So what's the best thing for them, and you cannot go wrong with Rails.
Yeah.
There's you can never
Solid.
fail, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
this everything you ever need, it will do. So it was just a very sensible decision.
Yeah, for
Of course,
sure.
that means that I'm living in Phoenix and Rails world at all times, and
Yeah.
it's not so confusing, because sometimes you just miss something out of the other language, right? You're like, I could
Yeah.
just do this if I could, but it's
Yeah.
not here. And vice
Yeah.
versa as well. There's certain
Yeah.
things especially within Phoenix. So Ecto is it's not an ORM, but it's the way you talk to a database, right, in Phoenix world. And Rails, I assume it's got, the similarities with Laravel and stuff in terms of,
Hmm.
accessing the database it's insanely easy. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so easy that you don't even think about it, right? Whereas Ecto is very much more, it's slightly more, it's closer to SQL, so you have to be
Okay.
a lot more savvy with your database technology. Whereas Rails, you could probably get by with with knowing no SQL whatsoever, right? With Rails and with Active
Yeah.
Record. So occasionally, sometimes you just like, especially if it's just something quick and hacky, you're like, I just need to get that there. And Ecto, you're like, okay, I've got to figure out actually how that works at the database. Whereas
Yeah.
Rails, you're just
Yeah.
like, just munge it all together and it'll be fine. And it kind of works, and it's slow, but I didn't need it to be anything more, right?
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
you kind of get used to Rails just providing that level of convenience, or rather Active Record providing that level of convenience. So occasionally I'll miss that, but it's like, well, it's for the best. I'm doing it properly now. So
Nice.
you're all
Yeah.
Laravel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Vue for front end stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. For my own stuff, it's always Laravel and Vue. For work, we're doing Laravel also, but we're not using Vue. We're using React,
Right. Okay.
which I didn't really have much experience with React, or pretty much any experience with React for this job. So I've been learning a little bit.
Cool.
It's good. I liked it, but I still prefer Vue. Vue is so much more simplified.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's to the point, and React has a little more stuff that you have to wire together, and
Yeah.
get it. Vue is like, it's so much more simpler.
Yeah. So my,
Yeah.
my only real experience with React is I built a React Native app for a client a few years back, and so it's kind of the same, right? It's just got a little
Yeah.
bit more structure with regards to fitting it in mobile views and stuff. And actually, last week I did a quick React Native app as well for .plan. I can
Hmm.
mention in a minute. So yeah, it's very verbose. It feels.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Everything
is.
has got boilerplate upon boilerplate, and it just feels like, seriously, I just want to stick that on the screen. Feels very top heavy.
Yeah.
Whereas Vue is much more like
It's
lean and
leaner.
mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I prefer Vue, and I'm used to it. I mean, part of it is that I'm used to it, and
Right.
I mean, I'm still learning some areas.
Mm-hmm.
But I've worked with it for a while, and I'm more used to it. And React, the fact that I'm new to it, it's already, with the limited experience that I've had with it at work, I can tell that it's a little more verbose. And
A little bit more baggage, right?
yeah, yeah,
So have
yeah,
you seen Alpine JS?
yeah. So I've been looking into it lately. We're also using Alpine at work,
Yeah,
and
really.
but I haven't really had, I guess, the need to work on it
Right.
that much, except for actually this past week did a little bit, just little something with Alpine, because it's already there, and I just,
I mean,
X data and this
right,
and
right.
that.
I mean, that's the it's kind of Vue, but even leaner still, right? I mean, the
But
syntax is
yeah,
very Vue-esque, but it just even removes any kind of baggage whatsoever, right?
yep.
So I used it in .plan just because I needed stuff, which things like hiding stuff and drop downs and modals and things like that. That Live View, for all of its amazing stuff, it still requires a trip to the server, right? So
Hmm.
the idea being that all of your interaction are basically on the server. So you just talk WebSockets for everything, and the server handles all of the state, which is fine for anything that includes a form or a box, or you're getting data, or anything that requires data. That's perfect, right?
Hmm.
Because your front end would probably still have to talk to the server anyway to get something. So there's no big difference. But stuff like just
Right.
displaying a drop down menu, you don't want to do that. I mean, you could, but you wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
So the kind of preferred or suggested method is to use Alpine, which was, yeah, I mean, it's perfect for that, right? Because it's such a tiny library, and then just being able to sprinkle things that need that immediacy just all over your code, and it's worked out well.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, with the latest version of Live View, there's an extension to the live view JavaScript live, the thing that does basically all the diffing between, and updating the DOM from the server responses. Now
Okay.
actually you can call JavaScript events directly from within that code, right? So you can
Hmm.
actually write JavaScript code within your Phoenix event. So you say, okay, if this event is clicked, then do this JavaScript event, and then send this to the server. And you can kind of chain things up and do those events in your Elixir code anyway without even needing Alpine. So I've been kind of even removing Alpine from the stack bit by bit. It's like, oh, when I'm working on something, I'll just be like, oh, I can actually get rid of that too. So it's, but at the same time, it's just really handy when it's there, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how this is
Yeah.
evolving. It's funny. We're
Yeah.
not done yet. We haven't finished with this whole web architecture thing.
It's always evolving. Yeah, I need to get more into it. I've been learning a little bit here and there.
When I first started using it, it was even, it did so little. It was pretty much, there's a data thing, you bind to it and things, and that's it. Whereas now, even that is kind of, it does a whole lot more than it used to. And you could go a really long way with it, right? It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
How's product development? Have you had a chance to do any?
Well, a little bit here and there. Haven't had much chance to work on it recently, but I've done some work on it, mainly in the area of improving the way it handles network interruptions. And I think we talked about that before a little bit. Some of the feedback that I received recently with people using the product has been in that area because it directly affects the recording, right?
This is the part of your app which kind of stresses me out the most. If I was building it, just because there's it's so. I mean, networks are just unreliable at the best of time, and the fact that you've got different things being uploaded and events requiring things, and that's the bit which would stress me out. So I understand the wanting to get that rock solid.
And it's the devil's in the details, as they say, right? It's just all these different things. Just as an example, while everything is working just fine, you can see the indicators, saying recording. And let's say one participant has problems with their network and they get disconnected. Well, if there's no network, then the signal that drives the status indicator may not come across, right? So the host or the other people in the session may still see that it says it's recording because it never got a chance to get updated, right?
Yeah.
Even though the person is not there anymore, but maybe the image still there because it didn't get a chance to clear. That's the problem. When the network connection drops suddenly, then there's not much.
You don't get the network has gone event, right? You just it doesn't have a chance to tell you.
It is exactly. It's an error, and those things, those little details and things that are important in the application are not able to get updated. So then now the user doesn't know, is it still recording? It says it's recording, but what do I do? And blah blah blah. So it's a little tricky to get that to work in a way that it satisfies everything. So that's what I've been working on, and so I'm gonna be releasing those updates pretty soon.
Excellent.
And hopefully that's it in that area. If all goes well with that, that's pretty much the last thing that's been keeping me from pricing and all that so that I can launch. So
let's hope we can get to the next step.
Next stage, yeah, for sure. Aside from that, I didn't have to, but I upgraded to Tailwind CSS 3 because I was still running on, believe it or not, I was still running on 1.9.
Oh, right. Yeah,
version 2 came and went.
You never get a chance to move to that. So.
Yeah, and now it's version 3, and I'm like, and I didn't want to fall behind too much. And
the 1 to 2, there was a few things which I had to update. Like forms especially changed a bit, and they to be honest, my client thing's still on 1.9, and I've just been putting it off just because so much of the stuff building up that I'm like,
yeah, you don't want to.
No, well, especially since 2 to 3. I mean, that API, the standard API seems pretty, unchanging now. I mean, there's extensions coming, but I don't think they're gonna do a drastic change of any existing stuff. Whereas, say, 1.9 to 2 was like, oh, your forms are broken.
Yeah.
So, I bet that was fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's cool now, especially with 3 and the JIT and just having a command line thing. It's just such a smoother experience. It's I'm liking the way it's going. Adam's doing a stellar job. It's really quite impressive.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. It's really neat. Although I'm having a problem with that a little bit that I still haven't been able to figure out, but I suspect it has to do with the way my build process is set up, where if I make any changes, it doesn't reflect the changes
Yeah,
unless
I had
I
that.
save the config file, the
Yeah,
Tailwind config file.
that sounds familiar.
So it's weird because it when I save my changes, it builds.
Hmm.
It looks like it's building,
Hmm.
and it completes successfully, but the changes are not reflected, and so I
Right.
have to go. Even if I didn't make any changes to the config file, the Tailwind
Yeah.
config file, I have to go into it,
Just
save it, and then it
okay.
builds again, and then I see the
Yeah, yeah.
changes.
I've had that.
So
Okay, I mean, it's fine most of the time because you're not adding classes that you haven't used elsewhere for the most of the time. You're tweaking spacing or text sizes and things, and that's it. Doesn't You don't notice it, and then you'll add a different width in or something. You're like, what the hell? Oh yeah, I've got to
yeah,
go and just poke that. And I don't know what I did, but I resolved it. I've had
okay.
that problem before in the past.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's hopefully it's as easy as that. I think it's a leftover from
Right.
my setup for the build process because I haven't
Exactly. Yeah.
changed that.
When I started a new project recently, I didn't have the issue from the beginning. So I'm like,
Uh-huh.
okay, I inherited something from because it's an older project and it's gone
y-
from like one dot early to
Yeah.
now. And so yeah, something. Well, I had a weird
Okay.
thing with one of my the host I'm using for dot plan is called Gig Elixir,
Okay.
and it's very cool. It's like Heroku for Elixir, pretty much. It's quite a small company running it, and it's really good. I've been really happy with it. But the build process is there's like three main ways of getting a binary that you can deploy in Elixir, and there's no canonical "this is the way." They all have pros and cons, and depending on what you want to do with it, or whether you want to do this or that, they're all
Yeah.
very valid. So you pick one and you go with it. But the build process for it, yeah, it runs on a server, not your machine. I think I do too many working on too many projects. I forget. And so when it was building it, it was doing it effectively in the wrong order. It was kind of building the CSS and then doing something else and effectively deleting it. So when it gets deployed, there was no CSS file there. It took me a whole evening to work out and it was literally just changing the order of two things in my build process.
Huh.
Hated my life at that time. I'm like, oh yeah, that fixes it. So, and it was one of those, like
Nice.
there's only one person in the world who seemed to be having the same problem on the Gig Elixir like Slack channel, and
Hmm.
they were like, yeah, I'm kind of like, someone else has got to see this. This is a pretty straightforward thing. Sticking Tailwind on a Elixir build that's got deployed on Gig Elixir, and they had they stated the same problem. I'm like, you, my friend, tell me what the hell to do. And of course, there was just like silence. They asked the question and then disappeared. And I'm like,
Yeah.
help. So
Nothing. Yeah.
when I figured it out, I went and wrote a long thread there and just like explained it. I hope they saw it just because I hate
Yeah.
it.
But yeah. And if not, somebody else might run
Yeah,
into that
exactly.
problem
Right.
later on, and
Exactly.
that'll be helpful. Yeah. I know. I come across questions and things like that where nothing. It's
Nothing.
just
It's just that there's a
yeah.
question. You're like that issue. How
Yeah.
tell me what you saw? And I think there's
There's
a
no answer.
XKCD that says something along those lines as well, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the thing is as well, especially with build processes, you spend what we should do is really document them really well, right? But we
Yeah.
never do because once you got them working, you're like, it's done. That's fine now, and you forget about it and you move on. And then in 6 months' time, when you're like something's changed, you're like, what did I know? I don't know what
Yeah.
I knew at that time.
Yeah. Because you don't work with that all
Right.
that often. It's just
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Once it's set up,
set it and forget it for a
works.
long
Exactly.
time.
Exactly. So it's interesting. I've been using Fly.io, which is a new, I don't know how new it is, but it's kind of an alternative to, again, Heroku and the whole platform as a service crowd. And it's really interesting because they've just hired the creator of Phoenix, which is kind of interesting because it's a really good fit. I mean, it's literally a perfect fit for how live view works, right? So as
Hmm.
I said, live view, every click, everything you do to interact with the page effectively is talks to via a WebSocket to server, and you get a response, which is fine, for most of the time because your latency is, Elixir is really quick, and what's your biggest downtime? Sorry, downtime. What's your biggest round trip? Is probably
Hmm.
150 millisecond. So I'm like hosting stuff in Oregon, and in Japan
Hmm.
there's still I can't get it less than like 180 milliseconds, but it's still enough that you don't notice it. Anything below 200 milliseconds feels quick enough anyway, right?
Yeah.
But what they've done to make that even feel even faster is you can fire up these. It basically works on these micro VMs that you can fire up, and in any given region. So you can say, I want it deployed in Tokyo and Oregon and London and Frankfurt or something.
Hmm.
And so you're super close to a server that can respond to live view incredibly quickly. But then obviously you still got database, right? Your database might still be in Oregon, even though your
Right.
server is in Tokyo. But you can basically fire up these database read-only replicas.
Okay.
And so you can say, okay, I want my writes to go to Oregon, but I want my reads to go to Tokyo,
Okay.
which means you've got this super fast distributed thing. And it sounds complicated, but the way it's set up and the way live view works, it's literally just, it's
Nice.
start a new one. I want some here and some there. Could you do it, please? And it just works. And it's
Nice.
like it's this stuff which it sounds insanely complicated to get set up, but it's like it's like 3 commands. It's no big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
It's technology
That's
has come
awesome.
along as head. So I remember
Yeah.
like one of my first app that I ever had. I had to put an actual physical box that I owned in a data center in
Yeah.
London and maintain it. So now I'm like,
Yeah.
I just spin these up all over the world. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really
Yeah.
interesting.
It's come a long way for sure. Yeah, I remember those days where when you had a server, you named it,
Yep.
it had a name, had a label.
That's right. Yeah, I also had the downtime in the middle of the night when I had to drive out to London Docklands and replace a hard drive and like try to resync
Yeah.
RAID array in the middle of the night, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to do this again.
No.
Never again.
No way.
Kids don't know how good they've got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, dot plan's been moving along. So I think I mentioned this, my my client that I'm kind of hand holding and has been really helpful getting things, like just being lots of feedback, just being really helpful. So they desperately want to use it mobile first,
Okay.
just because of their environment. They go out on site a lot.
Okay.
They probably spend 20% of the time actually at a desk. The rest is going out on site to do things, but they still want to maintain this kind of, that's one of the reasons they like this, is because it can maintain the communication, or at least the cadence of knowing what people are doing, even if they're not in the office the whole time.
Mhm.
So they really like this idea, but they're like, we're not particularly happy with you just using Chrome. They've got some older Android devices that they have as work phones, and they're like that. It just, people using it just through a web browser, they're not particularly happy with. I mean, not that it doesn't work well through a web browser. It's just, it feels like, they're like, I want a button. I'm like, well, you can install it as a PWA, and they're like, how do I explain that? And I'm like, so I'm like, okay, I'll make just literally a wrapper around the website with a little bit of Chrome to kind of make it feel a little bit more solid, and some network checking stuff. So if it goes down, it gives a message, saying that you need a network connection. Just some kind of stuff to make it feel more cohesive as an app, even though the app is basically a web view. So I was like, okay, I can do that. That's doable. So I built this React Native. I can't call it an app with a straight face. So I built this wrapper, and I pushed it out to them a couple of days ago as an Android internal test app.
Nice.
So I know nothing about Android at all. Haven't touched at all. So this is a kind of a bit of a learning curve, just even as far as the Play Store work. Getting a developer account and what's required to publish to the Play Store and all this. So that's been a learning curve, and so far so good. I've now just got to get it. The internal test seems to be going okay. They could get installed. They're using it. It seems okay. So now I've just got to get it through to the actual Play Store now itself. And because it's a React Native app, it works the same on iPhone. I know Apple are a bit funnier about wrapper applications, but I think if it provides some benefit, then it should be okay. We will see. I'm going to try and submit it anyway, see what happens.
Yeah.
I've been through the Apple submission process a few times, so I know what to expect there. And that, well, I expect the unexpected with the review process, right?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with mobile apps. Back in, I don't know, a few years ago, I tried building something just to learn and get a little bit of exposure to that, just using one of those, I think it was PhoneGap or one of those, using JavaScript and HTML and CSS. But I think what I was trying to build was too ambitious for being first time trying to build something like that. So I learned a little bit, but I got into a lot of trouble where I didn't know what to do, and eventually I ended up abandoning the project. But how do you get the app onto their devices without going through the App Store or
Well,
Google Play or
it
any?
depends on, so Apple and Google are different in this regard, but as far as Android goes, you can create, there's different levels of tests. There's an internal test, there's a public test, and there's
Ah,
a closed test, and then there's like Play Store kind of thing. So
mhm.
I've just gone with the internal test. You can just put in, it says, what's your email account? And so, okay. And then they gave me all their emails, and then I discovered they're not their Android, they're not their Google account emails, right? So it's like, go back and, sorry, can you tell me what the address is actually on your phone, not the email address you use? So
Yeah,
again, I never having done it, I just didn't even think about that. It's like, oh, you just send them a link, right? No, it's got to be, you've got to authorize their Google account to be able to access this internal test application to install
I
it. And
see.
whereas Apple, it's, you've either got TestFlight, which is kind of a managed system, or you can get their UDID numbers, which is effectively serial number for the device, and you can register those into your build, and it works on those devices, and it's like a side loading process for that. So the Android process seems to work well when you get the right email addresses to give them
Yeah,
to it. So
yeah.
because I wrote
Have
out,
to be a Gmail
it's
module,
not Gmail.
Google
I mean,
account.
because if it's a Google Suite workspace, I can't remember what Google's stuff is called
Oh,
these
right.
days. As long as
Yeah,
you're using it for Google accounts, and
I
then it's a
see.
work account thing. So yeah, that works. Or it
I
can just
see.
be whatever you log into the phone with to download stuff on the Play Store. So as long as you've got those emails, you can just put them in and make those authorized for the internal test. So,
I see.
and
Oh,
then
that's cool.
I can just push to that, it installs, and that's it. So it's actually quite a smooth process when you realize, understand what you're doing. But again, being the first time, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's yeah. I say I wrote some Objective-C stuff back in the day for iPhone and things, so I'm a lot more. Well, even that's changed a lot since I've done that. So I'm sure I'll have to go through a whole new learning process for that as well.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
was interesting just doing this. It kind of forced me to go back and re-look at all of the pages, how they work on a mobile, because everything worked, but it was not necessarily as good as I'd like it. At least I found out that it wasn't as good as I'd like it. So it was a good opportunity to like just tighten up spacing, font sizes. It's got like a sticky banner at the top now with the menu, so it doesn't,
Mhm.
it feels less like a web page, more like an app.
Yeah.
And so just going through, just tightening everything up as far as to make so it works better in the mobile version.
In the mobile view.
Right.
Hmm.
So I'm
Nice.
really happy how that's turned out. It feels
Cool.
like a lot better. It was just a good
Nice.
excuse to go through and reassess the whole design of it. It's like, so
Yeah.
it,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
I'll
Well.
also take out a lot of duplicated Tailwind classes, which
Oh, yeah.
because I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, actually, I don't need that anymore. And
Yeah.
also, I ended up refactoring a bunch of views again because it's like, hold on, this is the same view just with different data. So it was a good
Hmm.
opportunity to just tidy things up a little, do a bit of refactoring and things without breaking anything. And that's stuff which you never make time for, really. You're always pushing ahead with new things.
Yeah.
Whereas this was, I have to look at the same thing, relook at the same thing I've already written to just tighten it up. So it was a good excuse to do that. So I'm happy with how it went. It's we'll see if I get get the thing on the store. It's that's the next thing. Just waiting for Google to give the go ahead for that.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I really had to do a little bit of that myself, working on this, network related stuff. Came across a bunch of code that could be refactored and improved, and ended up removing a lot of code, which is always great. Just
It's the best feeling.
seeing all these opportunities to make it more compact, and
Yep.
just deleting a bunch of code that, well, I can do it this other way, it's better, or unify certain things where
Right.
I had,
It's the best
there's
feeling. It really is.
a little bit of duplication because of the way that I approached it first. Of course, duplication is the one thing you're trying to minimize or eliminate as
I
much
mean,
as
I'm
possible,
kind of
right?
very liberal with the duplication when I'm writing stuff. I mean, I kind of try to leave it for this revisiting thing. Some of the things, well, I guess that's one of the things I've learned over time is that, yeah, you're never going to get your abstraction right in the first place, right? Unless you sit down for a week and design everything. Which, I mean, even then, you're probably going to forget something. It's never going to be
Yeah.
right. You're going to end
Yeah.
up changing something. So I'm very liberal with just cut and pasting code and tweaking it to work. And then when everything is settled, I'll go back and reassess it and kind of tidy it up. So this was an opportunity to do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I tend to do that too.
I'd rather be
That's funny.
explicit in, I'm doing this here now. It might be the same as I'm doing over there, but I'm doing this here now, and I know how it's working, and I know exactly what I'm working on, as opposed to some, multiple abstractions somewhere else that just,
Oh, I wanted to ask you,
shoot.
what kind of reception did you have with the wrapper that you created once you deployed it to
So
them?
they're using it now. I'm waiting to hear back. So I literally,
Okay.
they installed it yesterday. So I'm waiting to hear. No
Nice.
complaints so far. So
Okay.
we shall see. So,
That's good.
so
That's
the other
good.
thing I did, I think I mentioned last time, I was looking at this thing for making like documentation called Tango. So I spent an hour with that and rattled out like 20 help pages. So yeah, I'm telling you, it's pretty nice for just getting something going. And because you can, you can effectively link to any help page. So I'm just making like a Notion page of how to do things. I can order them. I can make that public, like link it to it from my site, and then just use that as like a, this is how to do this, and just linking to them. I mean, most of them are like 3 steps, right? Go to this page, click on this, and accept that. But I said the amount of times that we're getting requests for like, how do I do this? Well, it's easy, but
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
yeah. So I rattled through those, and yeah, it's just really nice for that. I'm quite impressed. So
Is that connected to any kind of like a CRM or help desk or
it's not.
anything like?
I mean, I
Okay.
could do, but this is purely, say, it's like a Chrome plugin that you just browse to the page, you do the thing, click done, and then it'll set them out. You can delete them, you can replace images, you can just add description, and then just say that's done. You get a link, you can share to it. So it's one of those things that you're like, it's a perfect kind of indie project. I don't know who's behind it. I don't know how big the team is or anything, but it could be an indie project just because it does one thing and it does it quite well.
Nice.
So it's kind of impressed with that.
Cool.
So
Cool.
I could link it to say some kind of help desk thing, but for the moment I'm like, the simplest thing is just make a page with them all listed, and they can use their eyes.
Yeah.
Command
Yeah.
F if they really need to find something.
Nice. Cool.
So trying to stop myself from building anything else.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't need more projects.
I really don't.
At
More
least
sleep,
for now.
not more projects.
Right. How are your signups going?
I need to. That's the next thing. So once get this app done out again, because this client's kind of waiting on this, it's back to the trying to get people on board. So I did a few weeks ago. I did some tweaks to the landing page, and I kind of got a better idea of how I want to redesign it. So again, that's a thing for when this is done. Just because.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's too much to try and do it once, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As you said, try and get into. As I said, you said a while back, you'd like to get into a kind of a cadence of being able to do development and then development, marketing. It's a nice goal, something I'd like to try and do, just because then at least you can. I mean, this kind of context switching is killer. I mean, I'm sure you find it too, just switching between work projects and then personal projects. And, even when your personal project is actually like 10 projects in one, right? There's not just one thing. There's the whole, the technicalities of how it's working. And then there's, the marketing side of it. There's even the support side, things like that. Being able to just pick one, and at least you're only context switching between work, paid work, and this project, then, one thing for at least, a week or two. The more I thought about it, the more I'm like, that would be an ideal, really, just because otherwise it really does wear you out. Just this constant, like, what do I need to think about today? I can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not easy. It's harder too when it comes to the personal projects, because you can only work on your side projects a small amount of time that you have available, and you never know how long that's going to be, how much time you're going to have. So you can set a goal to work on product development this week and do marketing next week, but if you don't get enough time to work on the project and reach the goal that you had for the week
Right.
for product development, then I've been struggling with that because at the end of the week, I'm supposed to the following week switch over to marketing,
Right. And
but
you're like, but I
I'm
can't
not
leave this
done.
here.
I
Yeah,
can't.
exactly. Right, right.
I'm in the middle of all
Yeah.
this stuff, that I'm coding, and you know how it is when if you leave that, then
Yeah.
coming back to it, it just takes forever to restart that
Yeah. Yeah.
thought process, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, again, the context switch is even bigger then, just because you've got to reload your
yeah,
brain with all the stuff that you knew at that point in time before, right?
yeah. So this whole thing about getting into a cadence of working back and forth hasn't really worked out for me, at least not yet. I still haven't figured it
It's a nice
out because
goal.
it's a nice goal, but I think that might work better once that's the only thing you're focusing on. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
once you're doing this full time, then that's your main thing, so you can divvy it up and kind of
Trying to give any kind of estimate and things right now is just I
yeah,
just don't know, because I can't
yeah,
guarantee. I don't know how much time I'm going to have on a thing today or
exactly,
tomorrow, and like, family stuff is always there as well. So it's like you
yep,
think, okay, I'm going to spend Saturday doing this, and then actually we can't because it's a thing, and that's fine, but it just means estimates are like
yeah,
completely wild. You get
yeah,
no idea.
yeah,
So it is tough.
yeah,
Got to have a goal.
yeah. So,
So hopefully, yeah,
uh,
once you can finish this kind of network stuff, you can at least put that to bed for the moment. And again, there's everything else works so well. I really hope you can get to the stage where you can start charging people for it.
yeah,
'Cause I
yeah,
think you're
that's the
going to be
goal.
fine getting customers. Like you've got as I've said before, you've got such a clear target here.
Yeah,
There's no ambiguity as to who can use this app, which I fail with a little bit with mine. It's more difficult with mine because there isn't a clear single target market. So yeah, I
hmm,
think once you open this up, just you can laser focus on particular people and targets and just go for it. So I'm excited for you. Just got to
yeah.
get there.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. And now I've been. Oh, that's one thing I wanted to share with you. I've been reconsidering the whole paddle thing, and I may revisit that and see if I if I go with them.
it's
It's just
I understand where you come from.
yeah,
What, a
it's
pro or four paddle? You mean
a pro
pro?
paddle, I
Okay,
guess.
right,
Yeah,
right,
pro
right.
paddle.
Yeah, did you see
Um,
they kind of did a bit of a relaunch this week?
yeah, I
Yeah,
heard. I haven't gone to their site, but I read
mm,
something about it. Yeah,
yeah. And I think they're going to make all their pricing more transparent. And I think that was one thing which really seemed to put a lot of people off, is just the fact that they're this kind of opaque, like, well, when you start using us, you'll find out how much we take. And it's like, what?
yeah, yeah.
So they're going to be a lot more upfront with everything. And so I really like this just idea of them taking care of the tax and the filing and everything. And
Hmm.
it's just for we just said how much stuff you got to think of. If there's one thing you can remove, I'll take it. And if that one
Yeah,
thing is tax, I'll definitely take it, right?
yeah.
It's so stressful enough as it is, but them just taking care of that whole side of things, it makes it definitely worth it to me. Again, especially when I'm not it's not like I'm in the US selling to US customers and that's it. And
Hmm.
it's no, I'm already at a disadvantage just from the first sale I make, because I don't know where it's going to be. I mean, my
Right.
accountant's already like, I had a meeting with my business accountant the other day, and trying to explain this concept to him. He's like, so you have a customer in Japan? Yes, I do. So you're collecting sales tax? Well, no, paddler. And he's like, who's paddle? Well, they're an Irish company. And it's like, say what? So they take care of that, but where does the sales tax go? It goes to them, and then they pay it to Japan. What? Yeah. So
Yeah.
trust me, it's okay. Yeah. So
I
I mean,
wish.
that's a disadvantage, well, because in terms of if I register for sales tax, then things my company buys, obviously I can claim sales tax back, but I'm not spending
Yeah.
that much money. So
I wish it seems like I may be wrong about this, but it seems to me that there aren't that many professionals in that area that understand the modern
no,
ways of doing business online. Like,
no.
I'm talking about tax professionals and lawyers, and maybe lawyers a little, so it's getting a little better, but there's still a lot of like uncharted territory where you need professional advice, but
Hmm.
you don't know who to ask because they don't really know,
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it
That's
was just when I was setting up the company here, and the first thing they list of questions is where's your revenue coming from? I'm like, from selling software, like services, and well, what's your customers, what's your billing stuff, and it when you kind of say I'm not going to be billing with invoices, I'm not going to have an office, I'm going to be selling primarily to abroad, and they're
mhm.
kind of just like, what are you doing, who are you?
Yeah, they don't know. They don't
No,
understand.
no.
And it surprises me because there, with so much business going on online, you
Mm.
would think that there would be, a lot of demand. I mean, there is a lot of demand, so there should be more professionals out
Yeah,
there
I
that
mean,
that
I guess
have.
it's one of those things where you kind of we do live in a bit of a bubble. You think every man and his dog is making a web app, right? And apparently they're
Yeah,
not. It is still a small number in the grand scheme of things. But
that's
obviously,
true.
when you
Yeah,
live in this world, it feels like everybody is building something, everybody's doing better than you, everybody's having a lot.
yeah,
It's
for sure.
very difficult to get a true perspective on things sometimes, and
Yeah,
even when you know that that's the case, it's still difficult to actually accept that. So yeah, I understand. But yeah,
yeah,
so for the most part, accountants say, when you talk to look for accountants, and they expect you to basically have an office, be hire Japanese people, see have Japanese customers, and then there's all these assumptions, and it's like, what do you mean you're not doing any of those? And it's like,
yeah,
how are you a business then? Well, it's just different.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's not brick and mortar. It's
mhm.
it's a different
They
ball
expect
game.
they
But
expect me to be like running a bar or a coffee shop. That's kind of like
yeah,
the limit of kind of understanding of like what kind of business I could be doing, and
yeah,
it's difficult.
yeah.
So I mean, my accountant, that I've got, I'm happy with him. He seems to get it eventually. He just
Mhm.
you need to explain it.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I've been reconsidering the whole paddle thing, because if the like you said, if I can remove one thing from the equation that I have to worry about, yeah, they take a cut, but that may be
Anybody's
worth
going to take a cut.
the
Yeah, I
peace of
mean,
mind, peace of
even with
mind,
Stripe,
and
they're still taking a cut for card
they're still,
payments and stuff.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's just a little bit more of a cut, and if it means it removes the lack of anxiety over whether I need to file something is worth it in my book.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want
and
to be on
that's
the hook for like, oh yeah, you should have filed this paperwork to Luxembourg, and I'm like, well, I didn't know that,
yeah,
and now
yeah,
what's going to happen now? It's just
yeah.
that unknown and that stress and uncertainty of, and especially when it comes to tax, that's not something I ever want to mess with.
Yeah, and that's what I've been thinking about, and being that our businesses are online, right?
Mhm.
And
I mean,
you potentially have customers all over the world, so
mhm.
it becomes even more of an issue
It always surprises
to
me that,
stay
I
on
mean,
top
I
of
know
it.
Stripe is making roads in this area, and they have
Yeah,
things that you can add on as extra services to take care of tax things and stuff, but it really surprises me that it isn't like ultra high on their roadmap. Maybe it is. It's just complicated, right? So
yeah,
it because it feels like you could get into a very deep well of pain very easily if you're not
yeah,
careful, right? It's so easy to take payments, and then, well, now you've got to report these payments,
yeah, yeah,
and you've just taken all this money, and well, hopefully you've taken all this money, and then suddenly you've realized that they're in 20 different countries, and 5 different states, and guess what, that's now your problem.
yeah,
So it's, yeah, that would concern me, and it's good that payments are being made much easier, and Stripe has really led the way there, but it feels like there's potential for shooting yourself in the foot, right?
right, right. And I think I asked you this before, but if you go with Paddle, you technically you don't need a Stripe account because they're not using that,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
They're not.
Hmm.
They're doing their own thing.
Yes, they do the wrong thing. I mean, let's say on your credit card receipt, as in your customer's credit card receipt, it says Paddle and then parentheses and your business name. So it does have your name on the receipt, but they're the seller of account. I forget what the official term
Hmm.
is, but yeah,
Hmm.
they're selling it, not you, basically.
Right, right. And so that means you can create plans, like payment, not plans, like
Subscriptions,
subscription
yep, yep. You can create as
plans and
many
everything.
different subscription plans. You could do a plan per. You can set different prices per region as well. So like my monthly price, I can set a round number in dollars and a round number in yen, just because otherwise, it's like if you're in the US and it comes out and it's $43.29 a month, you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It's easy just to say it's 45 or 40, and
Yeah.
so you can set
Yeah.
a number for each region if you want, or just set it in dollars and let it auto translate to whatever the equivalent is. And then obviously the sales tax is added on top of that, and that's just
Mm.
done automatically. Stuff like
So
it, yeah, you can set like annual or monthly, you could recurring ones, one-offs, you do everything in that, so it's good.
So one of the things that I would like to do that I've been thinking about for a long time is doing purchasing parity
Yeah, yeah,
parity
it'd be nice to
parity. I can never say that.
yeah, purchasing
And
parity.
power parity.
Our parity, yes.
So I've been thinking about I would love to do that. That's one of my goals. And
Mm,
I don't know if and that's one of the reasons I wanted to use Stripe because my thinking was that I could do more custom stuff with
mm.
it, and do stuff like that. But I don't know if that's something that I could do with Paddle.
I'd say you've got this option of just being able to set different currencies to be different prices.
And that's what made me think of that because if you can set up different prices per region or something
Mm.
like that, then maybe there's a way to do that.
Yes,
I don't
so I
know.
think you can. Yeah, I didn't look at it closely, but I think
Mhm.
there's a way of. I say you because you can set it with the currency, which is if you're paying with a card in that currency, that means that's where you are, right?
Mhm.
If it was
Right.
just so, I think that's as far as they do. They might do more. I didn't look into that.
So they support all kinds of currencies
Oh,
around the
big
world?
list. Yes, yes, it's a
Huh.
very big list,
Oh, wow.
which is why I only picked dollar and yen because it's like, well, I'm not going to set a price for everywhere, but the
Yeah,
main ones are
yeah.
fine. So.
Huh. All right. More to think about.
And so the interface to it is very straightforward as well, in terms of getting webhooks, and there's an API as well, but I just rely on webhooks for most things, and they have like a just a good retry thing, and it's pretty straightforward. The biggest thing which threw me is just having because I did monthly billing and with 3 plans and annual billing with 3 plans.
Okay.
That means I got 6 plans, right? So then
Right.
you've got, and I'm like, this was a bad idea. In hindsight, maybe I should have just kept it to 1 or 2 and just said, like, yeah, it's monthly billing and it's this price and there's 2 plans or something to
No
start
annual.
off with.
So you're
Well, I mean,
thinking maybe no annual.
you can, but an annual subscription is just another price, another subscription
Yeah.
type, right? It
Hmm.
just means that there's so many more cases to check, right?
Hmm.
And so each one of those has a different subscription code type. So you get
Right.
a thing that says I got type 16, and you're like, okay, what's that? And then you're like, okay, you've got that, which means you paid this here, and it's just so much like logic just to maintain when
Hmm.
and then of course you got if they cancel, they their cancellation only starts at the end of that billing cycle, right?
Hmm.
So they've
Hmm.
stopped paying and you've had the notification, and you won't bill them again, but you've got to provide the service until this other date in the future, right? So the
Right.
logic, it's surprising just how many details there are to it. It sounds like, oh, you just you can hit this API and you get billed, and then there's all of these little things that you've got to take
Hmm.
into account. I mean, but their service is very straightforward, but there's just a lot to it. And
And
again, as
this
a first case, I mean, that's why when you talked about billing, metering, and things, and it's like just try and keep it as simple as you possibly can, at least for the first one, just because
yeah.
I overdid it and I regret that now. I overdid
Mm.
everything. Oh, how
And
I was
this is all
naive,
through
right?
and this is all with the API, right? This
Yeah.
is your custom integration
Yes.
with their using their API and
I
webhooks.
just use the JavaScript thing to overlay the payment thing. So there's basically a JavaScript hook, which you basically just say that, and it pops over an overlay. When they complete it, you can specify a URL to get pushed to. So successful subscription, they end up in a different URL, and you get the webhook. You can do stuff with it. It's all very, I say, pretty straightforward. and the documentation's pretty good. There's a sandbox account as well, so you can. But of course, then you've got a sandbox account, but of course, because it's a completely separate thing, right?
Yeah.
You create sandbox subscriptions, which of course have different IDs as well. You're like,
Yeah.
why do I take account of this? So then you abstract that in your code. So you've got like environment variables setting what the different price plans are. And it's just like all of this complexity starts building on top of each other. And all I want to know is if they've paid $40 or not. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's surprising how quickly all of this, just builds upon each other, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, more to think about, and I'll see. I'll have to revisit that.
That's right. I mean, I think you talked last time about having like a I forgot what you called it, but basically things expire. Your storage is for a certain amount of time or something, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Now I can think of the term.
Yeah, I know. My mind has gone blank too. But yeah, I'd say just my advice would be try to minimize the options in as much as physically possible. If that includes just having a lower monthly plan and a higher annual plan or something, because if they're going to want higher anyway, they're probably going to want to pay long term anyway. So just the less subscription plans you have, the easier your life is going to be. So that's my
yeah, that's true. Retention period.
There we go. That's the one.
I was calling it. So
well done.
file retention period. Yeah.
Yeah. My language ability is dropping off. Next one. I hope you can get this stuff finished anyway, just because I think it'd be a big relief for you as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully next time I'll have a report on how my app went down and the fact that it's in the store, and I'm working on a new landing page. That's my goal for the next chat. How's that?
Nice.
Let's see if I can meet it.
Nice.
I'll do my best.
Well, my goal for next time is to already be working on pricing and billing integration.
Cool.
Whether it's Paddle or whatever it is.
There is an approval time with Paddle, so you have to apply and get they have to check your business account, business details, and they have to also see your application. You do like some screenshots or a video showing them what it is. You have got to explain all of the what you're billing for and all the rest. So read their acceptable cases. I mean, yours is fine, but they will ask questions about it, so it isn't just a straight approval. So you'll be fine, but just warning, it's not immediate. But you can sign up for a sandbox account in the meantime and use that to develop it. But before you go live, there's a period where you get approved. So.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing I need to do. I need to file for establishing my company legally.
Might be an idea
because I haven't done that yet. And part of the reason was I was waiting for this year to roll around, because in California, there's a minimum tax that I would have to pay, even if I haven't done any
no revenue,
no income.
Right.
And so if I did it late in the year, last year, then I would have been on the hook already for the taxes. So now that it's beginning of the year, I can do it. I have a whole year to,
you'll be fine. You'll say, I have no doubt that you'll be having customers lining up.
I hope so.
Well, I mean, I think, as I said, you know who to target. If you set a sensible price plan, you're fine. You've got no problems with the product. It's exactly what I think a lot of people want. So just getting people to know about you is going to be the fun bit.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
Yeah,
just to get the word out. But yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I hope that's the case.
Time will tell, but I'm sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Should we wrap it up here then?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, it's nice as always. See you in a couple of weeks.
And so I want to hear all about about your pricing strategy.
Awesome. Yeah, need to figure that out.
Cheers,
awesome.
Man.
All right, Alan. Take care.
Cheers.